All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another one of our conversations here with Dan. I think a lot of people who watch these know, but some people may not, that I'm the worship and children's minister here at Broadway. Mm-hmm. And so as part of worship ministry, and I have a background in music, I do a lot of singing, as one would guess.
He's an awesome worship leader.
Oh, thank you.
But don't let that go to your head.
Yeah.
So you had this conversation.
I did.
Coming out of that.
I had a conversation because when you're doing a lot of songs, people tend to say, hey, I've got a word or a phrase that I'm bothered with. And
is it scriptural or not?
Exactly. Yeah. And so in this case, the question came down to, there was a couple of songs we had sung that day about the God above all gods, or the God above all others in heaven or earth below. And the person I was discussing with just said, I'm not comfortable with that. And I said, well, it's in the Bible. And he said, but I'm still not comfortable with it. And so thought it would be a good idea to discuss what is maybe the word for God? What does it mean? Are there other gods? You know, kind of where does that lead us? And how can we keep it biblically grounded?
Okay, go to Exodus 20.
Okay.
This is a good place. Exodus 20. Start with verse 1 and read a couple of verses there.
All righty. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
So if you look at verse 1 there, God spoke. That's Elohim in Hebrew.
Big G.
Yeah, but it's just Elohim in Hebrew.
Got it.
No big, no small. That capitalization is just, that's not in the original.
Yeah.
So just Elohim. Then the Lord your God, that's Elohim again, same word.
Okay.
And then verse 2, you shall have no other gods, that's Elohim again.
But it's a little g here.
No, in the Hebrew it's exactly the same.
It's all the same, yeah.
So Elohim, the word for God, and also the word for gods, plural, just means great or mighty. So that generic word means great or mighty beings. All right, so the greatest of all beings is the creator.
So the Elohim above all
Elohim is a creator.
Okay.
It's not that there are not other Elohim, mighty beings.
Yeah.
Because he says in verse 2, I don't want you having any other Elohim ahead of me or before me, or literally in my face. That's what it says in Hebrew, al paneh, before my face.
God's saying, get out of my face.
He's saying, get all these other gods out of my face. I don't want any competition. I'm a jealous God.
Yeah. And
so now
it says that there in verse 5.
In Exodus, excuse me, not in Exodus, but in that phone ringing distracted me.
Threw
for
you
a minute.
off. That's all right.
Wait a minute. In Exodus, when the plagues come, it talks about the gods of Egypt.
Yep.
And there were many gods of Egypt, and those gods of Egypt had priests that worked with them. And I think in Moses' first encounter with those pagan priests in front of Pharaoh, he threw his rod down and it became a snake, and those pagan priests threw their rods down and they became snakes.
They're in verse chapter 7. Yeah.
And then in the plague where Moses turns water into the blood, those pagan priests did the same thing.
Yeah. The magicians by their own secret arts did those things.
Yeah, and magician, I think, is a very poor rendition of what that really is. Those were pagan priests of some sort that were tapping into the dark powers of the demonic, and they were able to do some of the minor things that Moses did supernaturally.
Yeah.
But as you continue to read through the various plagues, there came a time when those men could not duplicate.
Yeah, they're in the third plague.
Okay,
Yeah.
read me what it says there.
It says there, starting in verse 18 of chapter 8, the magicians tried by their secret arts to produce the gnats, but they couldn't. So there were gnats on the man and beast. And the magician said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen as the Lord had said.
All right, and again, magician, I think, is a secularized attempt to say they were pulling tricks. That's not what this was the understanding in Exodus. They were tapping into other powers, other Elohim, other beings besides God.
That makes us feel all funny inside.
I know, but there is, to put this theologically clearly, there is one creator.
Okay.
And he is the mightiest of the mighty ones. And other mighty ones, like the powerful angels, and even those angels that followed Satan and fell, those are created beings, and they are not creator, they're created. And so the one who is and was and is to come is the creator. Revelation 4:11 says, "Worthy are you, O Lord our God, to receive the glory and honor and power, because you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created." So the reason we worship God is because he is creator.
Yeah. And so when we think about those other angels or other beings like that, do they get the same Elohim sort of designation? So even like there in Revelation, when he's talking about the angel of the church and different things, is that talking about...
That passage doesn't belong in our discussion.
Okay.
But
just thinking about the word itself.
Go to Psalms number 8. Or is that Psalms? Which is that? Okay, Psalms number 8.
Okay, Psalm 8. There.
And if you go down to about verse 5 or 6...
Yep, verse 5.
What does it say?
You have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings.
All right, some of your translations at Psalm 8:5 will say, you have made him a little lower than God. Yours says, you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings. Others, like the Septuagint version, the Greek Old Testament, says you have made him a little lower than the angels. But if you go to, see, and that word is Elohim right there. It's talking about angels. Well, how do you know? Because if you turn over to Hebrews 2.
Okay. Hebrews 2. Getting there.
And you start at verse 5 and just read there a little bit. Notice how he sets the subject at verse 5.
It says, "Now it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come, of which we are speaking. It has been testified somewhere, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you care for him? You have made him for a little while lower than the angels, and have crowned him with glory and honor."
So the inspired commentary of Hebrews chapter 2, when it quotes Psalm 8 verse 5, says you have made him, talking about Jesus, you have made him a little lower than the angels. But the word for angels back there in Psalm 8 verse 5 is the same as the word for God, same as the word for gods. It just means mighty beings. So the ESV, which is what you have, does a really good job of translating it heavenly beings, because that's what it means right there.
Okay. So when we're going through a song we're singing or we're reading these various things, we're really looking at one Hebrew word that through the various ways that we interpret.
So when he says he's the God above all gods, it means he's the mighty being that is above all the rest of the mighty beings. In other words, he's over all the angels, all the demons, all the spirit world. He's over all of those things.
And the Old Testament and the New Testament, when you're looking at Jesus casting out demons and everything, is pretty clear that those things exist.
That's right. And if you go to one more that really helps this, go to 1 Corinthians, to quote our president, 1 Corinthians.
You're killing me.
And go to chapter 10. Verse 20.
Got it. No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. I do not want you to participate with the demons.
All right, so when pagans are sacrificing stuff to their gods, what they're actually reaching out to is demons, which are mighty spiritual beings, but they're not the creator.
Got it.
But those demons would be what the Old Testament calls the gods of other people.
Yeah, that's where, again, the translation, what we were talking about is the little g, big G. That's not in the language, but that's kind of...
It's context.
Yeah, it's kind of how we're trying to convey through modern English the differences there.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So hopefully that helps out a little bit, and I appreciate you walking us through that. And like I say, it makes us feel a little odd. We don't like to talk about the spiritual realm very much, but I think that's why we get a lot of questions related to that.
And like you say, in the Hebrew Bible, what we call the Old Testament, there are many passages where it talks about him being above all gods, and the idea is above all of those other spiritual beings that are powerful, but they're not creator.
Yeah.
They're created.
There we go. Well, thanks again, Dan. Y'all have a good week.
Later.
Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.